Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you can have a seat, we'd appreciate it. We'll make an announcement right up front, then in the middle, then in the back. Hopefully you'll get it. We ask you, if you would please, to be courteous and not have conversations while we're going, because we're going to go over a lot of stuff tonight. And so if you would hold your comments between yourselves, and also questions to the end, we'll take questions and answers as long as you want to stay. We don't have a back end time we have to go. You probably do, but we appreciate you being with us. This is one of my all-time favorite, I don't know what you actually call that, but it really rings a bell with me personally. So I hope you enjoy that. That'll be the most humorous thing we do tonight. Most everything else won't be. But want to just let you know, my father was a J.C. Penney executive all my life, growing up, and even until my halfway through my marriage. And he used to give an awful lot of presentations and information to people. And it's funny because I go by Chip, and my name is Charles Preston Taylor, but he would never call me anything but Charlie. And he'd say, "Charlie, let me tell you this," because you understand we're from deep South Georgia, and Macon, Caudill, if you've ever been down that part of the country. But he said, "Let me tell you, when you talk to people, you need to do three things. You need to tell them what you're going to tell them. Then you need to tell them, and then you need to tell them what you told them." Okay? That's going to happen a little bit tonight. But my hope is that you'll take home three major points, which I'll tell you right up front, and it's going to be on the information. Now, please know that even that picture and everything else we're going to talk about tonight is already on the internet on our RVCC site. So you can go see it. You can, if you've missed anything, you can ask questions about it. You can forward it on to other people that might want to see it. But the main things that we want to tell you tonight, and as you know, we're talking a lot about radio communication. And some of you may have heard today what's going on in Florida. You heard that? You used to live there.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Their emergency coordinators can't go out because there's no communication. So they can't even go do the rescue they're supposed to do. And so one of the things that we know is communication is vital to what we're going to be talking about. So the three things that I'm going to tell you tonight, and then I'll show you pictures of it and everything else. But always make sure your radios are off when they're charged, and take them out of the cradle and turn them off when you put them away. Not long ago, in the middle of the night, I heard a voice, and it shook me up. And I thought, somebody's in my house. And I listened, and it said, "Low battery." I've left one of these on. You don't want to hear that. And especially if you don't hear it and you ever need it, you're out of luck. So that's point number one. You want to make sure that you charge your radios and you have them off. Because the second thing is, can we pull those doors? I don't know who we got in there. Oh, that's kids in the library, isn't it? The second thing is, you need to charge the batteries fairly regularly, especially at least quarterly. Now, Sunday is our last monthly drill that we've been going through, and I hope all of you can participate in that and be part of it. It's going to be fun. We're going to do it a little differently this time, but after that, it's going to be in January before we do, and we're going to have one each quarter. So we're going to contact everybody that has a radio, either directly from us or through your neighborhood coordinator. And when you're contacted, that's an awful good time to take your radio out and charge it. Because if you're like me, it's real easy to forget almost everything. So we encourage you to make sure that that's done. And then last of all, and this is the biggest thing that we're going to talk about tonight, we're handing the ball off to you. We have had a tremendous response. We've got almost 500 radios in over 40 neighborhoods around Valley. That is just staggering to me. When we started, I know it's been fun, and we're going to talk about this a little bit in a minute, and then I'm going to try to blaze through this so I don't, babble. But the response we've had has been amazing. But from here on out, what if you were in Florida today and you and your neighbors couldn't get help? Who's going to help each other? Who are the only people that could in that circumstance? Us. And there is a well-known scripture that any Christian and most all people know: love God and love your neighbor. And you cannot love your neighbor if you don't know him. If you haven't met him, you can say, oh yeah, not going to happen. So as we go through this tonight, we just encourage you to remember the three things. Basically, charge your radio, but keep it off while it's charging and also while you're storing it. Charge it regularly. And then the third thing is we want you to expand your neighborhood. We want you to make sure that you contact them. I had a great experience just, 2 nights ago with Karen. Karen, where are you? There you are. I went over to her place and she had 3 sets of neighbors over and had gotten them radios and doing all kinds of good stuff, and it was terrific. Well, if you'll do that in your neighborhood, it could save your life or it could save your neighbor's life. Now, I'm hoping and I'm praying that we never need emergency stuff. This is not designed to scare you or do anything else. It's just to let you know that we're going to go through now. You'll see what it's going to let you know. So that I told you what I'm going to tell you basically. Okay? See, that was number 1. You see that one? Okay. So I told you what I was going to tell you, and now I told you. Okay? This is a map of our zones in Round Valley. Right now, what we have found out is that if you live in one of those 4 areas, your communication is excellent. If you're trying to contact people in other areas, it may not be excellent or may not even exist. But the good thing is, every single neighborhood, it's like being in the living room with them. We have tested that numerous times now, and no single neighborhood has a problem getting other people in their neighborhood to hear them and be able to communicate. So that's super. One other exciting thing, you see down at the bottom where it says RV zones with ham and GMRS stations? We have now in Round Valley 4 major ham stations that can go lots of places. And let me tell you, most of the hams that we have are at least 50 watt. These little radios are 2 watt, and our little bit bigger radios are 8 watt, but the 50 watt stations basically can get over, and we have one, Doug Henderson, who has a 165 watt station. So he can go pretty well everywhere. GMARS is these other radios that basically, that's the General Mobile Radio Services, and these are 8 watt, and we can talk to Greens Peak, and most of you understand how that works, but all of the radios will monitor Greens Peak, which is the western U.S. and also the White Mountains. And so you can listen on those, but these can actually talk. In an emergency, how valuable could that be? Okay, the fact that we have 1 in 4 households today already with radios and that we have ham stations and GMRS stations. It's remarkable what we have already. Our objective, though, is to have 1 in 2 households so that we can literally be our neighbor's keeper. And we're gonna go through that in much more detail. Okay, tonight we're gonna go over what to do specifically in an emergency. Now we're gonna go over these one at a time, so don't worry about this one, but this, as I say, all of this is on the internet right this second. It was early last spring that the Round Valley Coalition for Family Values and Round Valley Concerned Citizens, both of which have been around about 10 years now, but with Marcel and Monica and Kay Dyson and several others, we decided we wanted to really promote the idea of getting to know your neighbor so that we could be better neighbors. And we looked at that and we saw what all was going on. And so I think, Marcel, it was you, I'm not sure exactly who, but we said, look at what's happening right that minute in the world. And remember back early last year, gas was still in the $2 ranges. It has gone nuts. It got up to $5 and now it's backed off a little bit. Did all of you hear what's happened in the last couple of days in Europe with the gas pipelines?
Yeah.
Okay. I promise you that will affect our gas prices. And many experts believe that sometime this winter, our gas will be $10. Because it's not just a U.S. problem, it's a world problem. If you look at these things, have any of you noticed the supply chain is a little messy? I know, Leanna, you probably noticed better than most anybody with your store. But also, look at the Paradise Fire 3 years ago in California, where after 2 weeks, there were 83 people dead, but over 500 still missing because they didn't have any communication. Their towers were gone. And so, and I don't know if you've heard any of this, but there's a lot of talk about cyber threats with power and different other things. I had a great experience this last week with Marker. I actually, for the first time in my life, got to go through the power plant here. And it is miraculous. I have, a lot of you work there, but I've never even been close. Well, let me tell you, I decided the biggest problem is coal. If that coal weren't delivered, we don't have power. And so it's amazing some things that are possible. But as we go through this, I want to tell you the best quote I've ever heard in my lifetime about what's going on in the world. It says, we live in turbulent times. Isn't that a terrific word? Turbulent. The future is unknown. We don't know what's coming. I hope all roses. But it's wise for us to prepare for uncertainties, because when the time for decision arrives, the time for preparation is past. So if we get to like Florida did, what do? So with this in mind, have we ever experienced in Round Valley problems? I mean, most of you were here during the Wall of Fire and even before that with the other fires. It can happen naturally, but then there's also a lot of unnatural things. So what we decided from Round Valley Concerned Citizens and the coalition, Round Valley Coalition for Family Values, is we would go out and find a communication device and use this as our method to talk and get to know our neighbors. And it has been overwhelmingly successful beyond what we thought. Matter of fact, I joked when we first started and said we could have 500 people, or maybe even 1,000. And everybody in the room rolled their eyes, Well, we've done that, but we need to get 1,000. But this little radio that we've got, back at the first of the year when we started, was $10. Now, if you can't spend time, you can't go to McDonald's for $10. I mean, seriously, they've gone nuts. Their French fries are like $4. Crazy. But this is a very unique walkie-talkie. Now, everybody in this room somewhere in their life has seen a walkie-talkie, and most of us have played with them. But this one is different because it's programmable, and it allows us to actually do our own neighborhoods. There are 70,000 frequencies that we can use. Now, they bleed over, so we don't want to be too close to the next one. But with this possibility, your neighborhood can have its very own frequency, and it does. All the radios that we program have their own neighborhood frequencies. So that means when you turn it on to channel 1, it's your neighborhood. And then if you go to channel 2, and I joke, if you hear somebody not in your neighborhood on there, run to Circle K and buy a lottery ticket. Because it's your turn to win the odds of life. But on channel 2, that is all of Round Valley line of sight. If you're on one side of the dome and trying to talk to somebody on the other side of the dome, you're in trouble. Or Graveyard Hill in either Springerville or Eager or whatever. So there are some barriers. But again, all of the zones we have are the same. But then also, if you go to 15 and 16,
10, 16.
This is actually the Western United States GMRS repeater station. And I've heard people in Utah and Idaho and Colorado and New Mexico and California on this radio. If we have an emergency, you can't transmit there. This is 2 watt. It goes 5 miles. Greens Peak is 15 miles, line of sight. So you're not going to talk to them, and you're not licensed to talk anyway. But you can hear it just like a police monitor. Channel 15,
15.
that's just the White Mountains. So that's Show Low and Snowflake and Heber and around here. And if we needed to know what was going on, because we're isolated, and I like that, but it could be a problem. But if we know what's going on, then this radio is amazing. And then it has 14 walkie-talkie channels as well. So you can talk to any walkie-talkie that's out there. So anyway, that is that radio. So we decided we would use that as the method to get to know our neighbors. If you want to have a radio today, they're $15 each. And we can program them for you, and what we want you to do is just let us know you want them, and you pay for them now. We're down to a couple left over. I've got a half a dozen or whatever, and then mostly all committed. But we can order them and get them in a week, and we will program them for you and give them to you for your neighborhood. So if you do want more, they're still available for who knows how long and for how much. They've gone up 50% already in price. But anyway, and this, again, all this is on the internet. You look at the world at large and what's happened. Several years ago, we were warned by the Department of Homeland Security. Now, not the current one. They tell you to make sure you do your critical race theory correct. Isn't that true? Okay, well, but several years ago, we were warned of the possibility that we might need to prepare for up to 6 months without electricity. Tell me how that would be. I mean, it would be brutal. Okay? You might have heard this recently. We're talking about, Ukraine's talking about limited nuclear war. Tell me how limited nuclear works. There's no such thing. So that's an interesting thing in the world today. Do you know we're over $31 trillion in debt as a country? 31 trillion, but that's not the real thing. We have over $200 trillion of liabilities. The 31 trillion is we've already borrowed. The 200 trillion that's what we said we're gonna do. Except I think it's another 100 trillion with all this other stuff that's going on right now. You know, it is amazing. But let me give it to you in terms you can understand, because you can't understand trillions. Our government just bought a $900,000 house on a $1,500 a month income. Now that's what we are as a country today. You and I couldn't do that. We couldn't make it 1 month without foreclosure. I doubt we could make the down payment on that salary. But do you understand that we are fiscally the most irresponsible? It's what caused the fall of the Roman Empire. They started diluting all their gold coins and everything else, and it crashed. And so, one last thing that you need to know, your government can do anything it wants to you. And they will, and they have. Now that's not a real comforting thought. But in 1933, they said, oh, bring in all the gold. Or pay a $10,000 fine, which is today $200,000, and spend 10 years in prison if you don't. Now that's what they have done. They're already doing weird stuff today, let me tell you. But that's not the point. The point is, we have a network of telephones that some of you, your phones went down a couple of months ago for the weekend. Do you remember that? And they said it was a line was cut or this or that or another. Remember? Is that really what happened? Go to the FCC website, and they said it was in all of these areas in the country at the same time. Every one of them. Now what happened? Did our little St. John's cut line do all that? I don't think so. So there are a lot of things going on that give cause for concern, but one of which, what date does that say at the top? Can any of you read that?
September 29th.
What day is that? Today. It says that 2 weeks ago, we just barely missed the largest solar flare EMP that's ever been recorded. 2 weeks ago. Now what does that mean? Well, the biggest one prior to that, and this is how it works. I don't know if you know that the sun and solar, when it does solar flares, it lets off electromagnetic pulses that if it hits, it can screw up things, even to the point that in 1859, one hit and it burned down telegraph lines and offices. And their wires were that big around. Now that's how big they are in our phones, right? About that big. But they burned down telegraph lines. Well, if it happened today, if that one would have hit us, we were in real deep trouble. Everything, can you see this? Circuitry in your battery. Now, not all batteries. Most batteries don't have circuitry, but all these radios do. But anything that has circuitry in it could be toast. And I don't know if you remember, but in 1989, Quebec was hit with a solar flare, and it shut it down, wiped out transformers and everything else. Now, I'm going to go through the radio plan, and this is good because I'm on time. I would suggest you get a copy of this off the internet. I was going to print a bunch of stuff, but I don't have to print it. It's all for you already. Everything is there. We've got a sign-in sheet over there and business cards with the RVCC website address. Just go on the website, go to preparedness, and there it is. So all of this you see. But we're going to go through it, and number one was what? Always make sure your radio's off. Remember that one? Does this look familiar? We're going to go over this a couple of times tonight. But don't keep it in the charger either. A lot of people turn it on. They got lithium-ion batteries, and they can overheat and actually cause fires. Now, we haven't had any, but it's possible, and they warn you against that. But take it out of the charger after the light turns green. You know, you have to put it down in there. And every radio we've got from the factory is partially charged. But if you haven't charged yours, you need to do that before Sunday. Okay, because that's important. Hey, Gene. Okay. Number 2, charge your radios at least quarterly if they've been off. Now, if you've used them, charge them after you use them. Okay? Now, let me tell you, these bigger radios with these bigger batteries, I had some at my church, and I charged them every year at Thanksgiving, and they had 3 bars. So they were amazing. I've never tested this one, but I think that Monica thinks that we ought to charge them every 30 days. But I'm pretty sure that that will last quarterly. But since we're going to have quarterly drills, charge it before each quarterly drill every time you know we're going to have one. That also keep it turned off or it'll wake you up in the middle of the night. Okay. Conserve the battery as much as possible. Understand that in any emergency situation, you need that to last as long as it can. We're going to talk about when it turns off here in just a minute. But you need to know that in an emergency, you need as much charge as you can. So we'll talk to you about how to do that, but keep that in mind as we go through an emergency plan. Now look at the top. What's that second line say? No hard rules. What's that mean?
They're easy.
You can, yeah. Well, none of this is forced upon you. You can do anything you want. This is just good suggestions for an emergency. So we recommend that you do that. Number 4, make sure that your radios are set on channel 1. Why? Which on the bigger radios is neighborhood. Why would we do that? If we had to contact somebody like in Florida right this minute, it needs to be close. I mean, one of my close friends now, I really have gotten to appreciate Bill Reed. Bill, where'd you go? There you are, back in the back. But if he called me and said, Chip, I need your help, take me in a real emergency about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to him. Because he's about 6 miles. And on foot, it would take a while. But he's got neighbors not far from him that if he said the same thing, you can do it. Well, I've got Steve across the street. I've got George right connected to my property. I've got a lot of other people that are here that in an emergency situation, that's who I want to talk to. On your bigger radios, it's NEIGH. I don't know if you can even see that, but they have a screen. On the little ones, you just turn the little knob. Number 5, assess if there's an emergency situation. I've been asked numerous times, well, how do you tell when you turn your radio on? And 2 months ago when they went off, Bill Reed and Bill Henderson and somebody else, I can't remember who, drove up in my yard. How come your radio's not on? I thought it was just a real nice day without phone calls. You know, that was pleasant. And who knows, I must not have tried to call anybody. But how many of you ever had your power go off? About once a month at least. Twice a month, some once a week, you know, and who knows in a real situation, I mean, if they back down that power, it might be less. But how many of you ever had your internet go off? About once a day. Okay? I'm not going to say anything about Frontier. Okay? But the idea is, you want to know when there's a real emergency? When all 3 of them are off. Now, every time the power goes off, I generally try to call my son. If my phone works, I know I'm okay. But I'd say, you know, is your power off? No, he's down the valley. Half the time I could call the other part of Round Valley and it's not off. But, you know, and I don't know why, but I promise you this. If your phone doesn't work and your internet doesn't work and your lights don't work, we got a problem. Okay, so that's your warning signal. Now, I don't know how long that would last, and hopefully it'd be a flicker, but probably not. Number 6, and this is the one I said we really need to look at. If you don't have your neighborhood already organized, like they've done basically, already started to a major degree, up with Cam and with Karen and several of you up by the airport, and several of our neighborhoods, I know Monica and Dale's neighborhood is, and Marcel's neighborhood is pretty aggressive, but several neighborhoods aren't, and we got a lot of gaps in Round Valley. Now, I'm turning the ball over, I'm handing it off to you, because I'm done with the thrust of getting this set up. You shouldn't be. You should get real serious about your neighborhood, because it could really make a difference to you. And so as long as I'm fogging the mirror and taking breath, I'll be happy to program stuff and order it for you and do anything we can do. But it's totally up to you now, whether you're gonna expand your neighborhoods. And there's a lot of room to do that, because we still have 3 out of 4 neighbors that don't have radios. Where'd that go? There we go. No wonder. Number 7, unless you're experiencing a true critical need, just listen. It'll save your battery, and we don't really need people just gabbing. If there is an emergency, we just want to work together, and that doing that, just listen in and see how it goes. Now, when an emergency first starts, we know our ham stations are going to be on for sure, and almost all of our GMAR stations, and probably most all radios in town. If we had that 3-way, don't you think most people at that point are going to turn their radios on? But don't get, hey, how you doing? Is yours off? You want to just listen, and you want to make sure that we are able to communicate, and that's etiquette. Okay? We're going to hold all comments till the end of the meeting, or otherwise we'll never get done. But we'd like yours, so save it, would you? Okay? When transmitting, do so quickly and succinctly. What does that mean? That means when you are talking, it won't take you as long as it's taken me to talk to you. You just need to go, hey, I've got a problem, or do you have this same problem, or whatever, but do it quickly. That saves your battery, and it also allows other people to talk if they have an emergency. If you need to talk to someone directly, what do? You just go to a different channel. Now, if you have clusters, remember all of your little radios have clusters where you can have programmed, and most of you don't have these, but you can program your closest 2 or 3 neighbors, your best friend, your family, whatever, and that would be a great one to go to. But since most people don't have those set up, just say go to channel 9. If you need to talk to somebody more than just a quickie, then just go to a different channel. Why would we do that? That just frees up the main channel. And yeah, this is all common sense, and you think everybody would know every bit of this, right? It's just you're talking to somebody that doesn't use a lot of common sense sometimes, especially lately. Okay, number 10, and this is a biggie. This is the one that you really want to pay attention to, because this will allow us beyond the first day or 2 to know what we're doing. And let's look at it. When it's feasible, turn your radio on. If you don't need it minute to minute or whatever, and maybe the first day you will, but after that, turn it on every 3 hours. 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. That's AM, PM, whatever. If you're not asleep or gone, or, there's a lot of things that life happens. But make sure you're on channel 1, And this really should say, turn your radio on and listen for 2 to 3 minutes. You don't have to do it for a long time because, a lot of people's watches are a little different, but after a couple of minutes, you'll know if somebody needs something or if they'll know if you do. And then after that, if no needed information, switch to channel 2, which is all Round Valley, and listen for 2 to 3 minutes. And if you don't hear specific information, and it's not on here, but you might want to go to 15 or 16 and it'll be lit up. I promise you there'll be so much communication on there to wear you out. But especially 15, which is the White Mountains. If you want to listen to it for a couple of minutes, might help you. But the big one is take any action necessary to help, to be helped, or provide help. Because if somebody else is on there, that's when they'll be able to make sure other people are listening. That's one of the biggest questions. How do I know if somebody could help me or we're listening or whatever? And so if we know to get on there on the 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12, and if you got a problem at 3 a.m. or 12 midnight or whatever, get on there. Because there'll be people that are awake, and if they turn their radios on and you need help or they need help, then we know when we can talk to each other. Now, does that make sense to you? Is that a decent way to go? To me, it makes it. When you're going out but are in town, and now if you're leaving town, these little radios aren't going to do you much good, you understand. But if you're going out, it'd be a good idea to take it with you, especially if you're going to be gone during 3, 6, 9, 12. So keep that in mind. And this is one of the biggest things that we can do to really make sure we can communicate. Okay? And then number 11, ham and GMRS can monitor both their own neighborhood and, I think I got a picture of that. Yeah, at the same time. Now you can only transmit on one on these, but they're able to hear both at the same time. So they can hear their own neighborhood and all Round Valley. Now they're not going to hear your neighborhood if they're programmed to their own, but hopefully there'll be somebody. Let me say to you, and I can't emphasize this enough, your neighborhood is everything. What if you had that be defensive? What if something came where some cartel people were coming into town or people even that are already here? How do you defend your neighborhood? All you got to do is know each other and talk to each other. You can't do that if you don't know them and you can't talk to them, right? That's a fact. And so what we're talking about doing is making sure, and most of our people that have these radios, the bigger ones, which are GMRS radios basically, they're going to have them on most of the time because we can recharge them fairly simply. And I'm going to end up our whole thing with you being able to recharge your little ones. But that's something we can count on if we need to. And with our ham stations and with our GMAR stations, if we had a citywide, community-wide need, doesn't it make you feel terrific? We could actually do something about that, not like Florida or not like Paradise Fire or I'm gonna. And these radios, by the way, have 127 channels. Okay? And so there's a lot that we can do. All of them have 26 emergency, even if you're not ham licensed, they have 26 in there that I didn't even know this. I learned this last week from Doug Henderson. It's legal for us to use all of them in an emergency if there's a serious lack of doubt. And it's written into the law. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Without a license.
Without a license. Anybody, and to have access to 26 more programmed already. I met with, I won't say who, but I met with a guy to add our neighborhood and all Round Valley channels yesterday. He only had 119 of them full. Okay, so now he's got 121 of 127. But You can do all you want. I know Ed's got about 50. Where's you, Ed? He's got an amazing amount in his. So, getting ready to finish up here. What do you think that is? Does that look like your living room? It looks like Marker's. Not his living room, but Stan's for sure. Doug's is worse than this. I went in his house, he had a whole room full. But Jim, does yours look like that? That's kind of like Jim's tower. Where's Jim? Heman. His is just about like that. I mean, it's very similar. We're very fortunate to have these ham people in town that could get out, way out. And they're already of the mindset that, hey, we communicate in a need situation. The fact that we've got a number of them, I know Steve Schofield has got stuff at his place, and he's getting married, by the way, on the 15th in 2 weeks. So after that, he's going to be a neighborhood coordinator with you. But between now and then, he's not. But we're very fortunate that way. But look at what we've got, over 100 actual spots of people that we did, thanks to Stan Szymanski, Gary's dad, set this up several years back, where we already had a bunch of us that had these. And we had drills. We did all that stuff for, 2, 3, 4 years. And it is good. That's how we had already. But when we add 400 more, did that improve it? It absolutely did. And so that's where we are. Now the last rule on here, be courteous and thoughtful to others all the time. Does that make sense to you? I love this when it popped up. Treat everyone with politeness. Even those that are rude to you, not because they aren't nice, but because you are. Okay? Now that's the golden rule. That's loving your neighbor as yourself. That's all those things that good people, and my experience is the vast majority of people in Round Valley are great people. When we moved here, I felt like I was home. We've been coming here for almost 40 years before we moved here, and it usually averaged 3, 4, 5 times a year. It wasn't once or twice. But there are bad element people here. Do you know that?
Yeah.
There are people you need to be concerned with here, and my wife tells me now there's somebody taking those what are they, on the trucks, the catalytic converters. Okay, well, don't take mine. But the idea is that the vast majority of people in this town will go in the foxhole with you. They'll do whatever. It is amazing. People will bend over backwards and do almost anything for you. And most people are the same. They do it back. And that's just remarkable to me. Now, I want you to consider this, because it's great if you have a radio, but what happens after a week or two of using it? The most important thing you can do is have a power source. They're not expensive, but for $1.25 at what's that place? Dollar Tree, you can get an EMP protector. It's
I'll
called.
eat the cookies if you need somebody to eat.
Okay, she'll take care of the cookies. Of course, they're not as good as they used to be.
That's true.
They used to be better.
But you'll suffer through.
Yeah. Well, if for $1.25 and let me tell you, Arthur Bradley is the foremost expert in America. He's a NASA scientist, and he said that these things will work under this, that, and the other, but he also made this one caveat. We've never had one, so we can't guarantee it. So don't come to me if it's in a can, but it still won't work. Mine won't either, so we can cry together. But having a little Faraday cage for a little radio, it's better if you take a big popcorn can and put a couple other things in with it. The only rule is don't ever let metal touch metal. Either line it with cardboard or something top, bottom, and sides so that it can't touch, or make sure that the units themselves can't touch. And I'm going to show you on this, there are two little screws on the back of this that if you lay it down this way in the can, it doesn't work. If you turn it over, it does. But you want to make sure you take your antenna off and put something on the end, because that metal, if it touches something, you're in trouble. But that'll fit in that can right there very comfortably. So for $1.25, why not go the extra mile? I you know, it'd be crazy not to. But this middle one, the solar charger, that is how you can keep your radios charged indefinitely. But you have to have either this base, or there's another kind for the bigger radios, and everything about this is on the internet. So if you go and want to find out this, but we strongly recommend to you that you get that. If nothing else ever, those 3 items could be your bread and butter long term.
And Chip, tell them that solar charger is the size of a smartphone. It's just.
Oh yeah, it looks just like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you. That, but one last little point: if you're going on on Amazon to buy anything, especially these 3 things, don't look at the first one. There's as much as 100% price difference from one to another for exactly the same thing. So scroll all the way through, up and down, till you find the one that is the cheapest from a reliable company. Often Amazon will say Amazon's choice, but we helped trying to get a little set of ink cartridges the other day, and the cheapest one had more negative reviews. These don't work, don't buy them, don't waste your money. So pay attention to also, read what's in there, but it's a good way to get a bunch of stuff, but don't just jump at the first one. Now most of you have heard me say this, and I'm going to close my part with this. A couple months ago, I had one of the great experiences of my life. And you've heard me talk about that Haiti earthquake a year ago, where 1,200 people were dead and hundreds of thousands were displaced. And we had the guy that was over all the relief efforts for Haiti here in Round Valley. And I had a chance to sit down with him for 20 minutes. And he asked me right off what I was doing, how my family was, and what I was doing locally for preparedness, because he knew that I was doing some of that. And I said, well, we've got a pretty good effort going. And at the time, we had set over 300 radios. And I said, we're doing some fun things that are unique. But he said, let me ask you a question. We did these relief efforts in Haiti. And he said, what do you think was the #1 need that we faced of everything else? And my first answer was food and water. Actually, water and food. Because, where do you get it if it's in an emergency situation? And you better have some regardless, or at least a little stored till you can get some more. He said, no, not even close. So the biggest need we faced in Haiti was communication. We couldn't talk to anybody, just exactly what's going on in Florida right this minute. It can happen. And so it's my hope beyond description that this never makes any difference. And I'm not saying it will happen, but if you don't think some weird stuff's going on, you're not paying any attention. You don't know there's so many things that are happening. Right over here on both tables, there's cards that are Round Valley's business card, if you will, but it has the address, so you don't even have to write down the website address. But when we started that, 5 years ago, when we did set up the website, because we have a lot of different seminars we've held in here and different things on water conservation and food and gardens and what grows in Round Valley the best, and
Big preparedness fair in the dome.
yeah, the preparedness fair, just tons of things. And we set that up about 5 years ago, and we said if we ever had 100 hits, it would be a pure miracle. And look at that. We have over 45,000 people from all over the world that have sent me emails. What about this? How about that? What's going on? People are interested, but this is a tremendous resource. And if you don't use it, you're missing a good lick, because it is a good thing. And so, last slide, always make sure your radios are off when charging and storing. And don't keep your charger, keep it in the charger afterwards. So I hope that this has brought a lot of stuff together.